You're listening to DraftKings Network.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
So David Samson is already laughing for reasons that are confusing to me. David, hello?
Hello.
What's going on with you?
I'm laughing because I haven't been able to speak to Stu off the air at all, only on the air since I got back from Israel. And Stu and I had a moment while I was there, and I was reminded of it, and now I'm back on the air with him, so I still haven't been able to talk through it with him, so I'm just going to have to do it on the air.
What'd you do for me? I mean, I know the discussion we had when you went to Israel. I know what I asked you to do. I was not confident that you would actually do it. So why don't you kind of take the audience through that?
So when you go to Israel, in theory, whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, you visit the Western Wall, which is a prayer wall in Jerusalem, the holiest city for just about every religion there is. And Stu and I share religion. So he said to me, hey, while you're there, would you mind putting in a good word for the Jets?
No.
And I said,
not for my kids, my family, or anyone else, just the Jets. Yep.
It blew my mind. Because from my standpoint, what that wall is for is you say a prayer for health. And with all the things that have gone on in my family, in Dan's family, in everybody's family, there's a reason, there's a need for health. So I thought Stu was going to come up with something because he wasn't Stugotz. This was off the air. So I thought that he was going to say something meaningful and important. And instead he said to me, please put in a prayer for the Jets.
Well, did you?
For Aaron Rodgers' health.
Yes. I mean, have you seen all the injuries they've suffered over the last 7 years?
I said to him, I don't know whether I can do it because we're asking the wall or God or whoever you pray to
Aaron Rodgers.
In the same breath, care about Aaron Rodgers' health and the Jets and care about someone who you love being sick. I don't know that I can do it, but then I got there. And I hadn't spoken to him. I'd been gone for a week or so. And all of a sudden, I take the piece of paper, I take the pen, and I take video. And here it is. Aaron Rodgers leads the Jets to a Super Bowl victory. And I have video of me putting the paper in the wall of the Western Wall, and God is going to strike me down right frickin' now.
Wait, do you guys have God, like, opening, like, unfurling it, like, okay, cure Nana from her really bad arthritis?
We'll get to that, yep.
He's in an office with like one of those pneumatic tubes that get shot up into it.
And it's like, Jets win the Super Bowl.
Almighty.
Or do you have God like, finally, someone's not asking me for someone to get healed or money?
Jets win a Super Bowl? This is easy.
I'm so tired of all these sick people. I'm going to intervene with the NFL this year.
And then when he's done, does God like ball it up in their shoe like Kobe, like into the trash can?
Looks at Kobe, points at him.
It's even worse than that because there's so many pieces of paper inside the wall. And I'm shorter than the average person, so I was trying to find a place very low, and I couldn't get very high. You can see where the tall people pray because they can get the piece of paper in a place. They don't give you ladders, and you can't really jump because you'll break your head open. So I had to put my prayers in a place, and then all I could picture, being cynical, is every night there must be a guy who comes and takes out every paper and then just throws it away.
Because there's no way there's decades of people coming to this wall, putting paper in there, and like it still hasn't filled up somehow. There has to be.
It's a big wall. I mean.
It's not as big as you think. It's like a TV studio. You think it's really big until you get there, and then you say, wow, this is not as big as I would have expected. But that said, there was no 30-year-old paper in there, and I've been to Israel many times. Clearly, somebody's job is to get rid of the paper.
Well, not get rid of them.
What do they do with it?
Wait, so you guys have like a cleaning crew coming through every single night, checking out the prayers, what people are asking for, and whatever they deem meaningful stays, and what they don't gets thrown away?
So, guys, ever been to a driving range? You know the kid that drives that cart?
No, he hasn't.
that collects all the balls and stuff?
Yeah.
It's like, it just...
Yes.
You always try to hit that thing. That's what you always try to hit.
You got one of those.
Like the big tractor with a rake behind it.
Yeah, but it just takes all the paper out. And then what they do is they take all those papers and they just FedEx them to God. It just lands. He's got there. This is Lord. This is August the 8th. Right here, just stacked up. He's got an in and an out thing on his desk.
Right.
And the out is never full, and the in is just like mountain high.
It never stops.
Can you imagine the guy whose job it is to decide which prayers are wall-worthy and which are not?
Oh, there's some that get left
all of
in.
them, and he sees Aaron Rodgers leading the Jets.
Let's hope that guy is a Jet fan. I mean,
David,
That's why I was laughing. Pablo.
thank you for doing it. I appreciate you doing that.
a very tanned David Samson is joining us, and your tan, David, has been an object of fascination in a group chat I was on with Chris and Stugotz about whether we wanted you on the show today. And Chris wanted you on the show today not to talk about God and prayers, but because he noticed that you're, what'd you call it, Chris?
His farmer's tan on his feet. Let's pull this up. So this is a full day of sandals. Can we zoom in? I want the.
No.
Yeah, oh, geez.
Lucy is horrified.
Come on.
What's going on here, David? How many straight hours in the sun are we with flip flops for this kind of tan line?
I only wear flip-flops when I'm outside. If I'm not running in running shoes, other than that, I'm only in flip-flops. So for weeks at whenever I do anything outside, it's just with flip-flops.
That seems like a poor choice.
Why would you not crop the photo? Like, why would you not just cut it out a little bit?
I'm a one and done guy. So that was the photo that was taken. I was actually trying to promote the Nothing Personal merchandise and to talk about sort of the past, the present, and the future. And my feet are just my feet. They were in the shot.
One and Done is also your ranking on WikiFeet.
Give it to him.
His feet are fine.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Would you be shocked to know there's a backstory to that tan line?
More like a foot story.
Hey-o.
Not as funny.
Let's hear it. You gave it to yourself, really?
You'd be ashamed of yourself.
It's ridiculous.
There's a backstory beyond the fact that you wear thong sandals.
Sounds like you wear sandals and the sun was out and you got a tan.
Yeah,
End of story.
The backstory is I can't see. Part of the problem with Zoom is I actually can't see where the clock is or what we're doing, and I forgot
You
to
got
keep track.
You got
plenty
time.
of time. You got plenty of time.
We're not on air.
So-
Don't worry about it.
The quick backstory is that I was whitewater rafting in 1998 during the home run chase in the Grand Canyon. And I was not in baseball. I was working on Wall Street at the time. And you have to wear these sandals that you buy that are strapped like Birkenstock sandals. They have a strap over two parts. And for the first time in my life, I got a foot tan where there were marks on my feet after that trip. And that trip was one of the most meaningful trips of my life. To this day, it's one of the most meaningful trips of my life. And I was 30 years old, and I looked down and I said, I never want to forget that moment and how I felt in the canyon. And so from that day forward, I have had foot tan lines.
I feel like Billy's version of the backstory was a little better.
If I like a place, I go and get a magnet or something. Yeah. Don't change my lifestyle forever.
And I've stuck with it. I've stuck with it for all these years, for 25 years, that I continue. And every time I look at my feet, I'm back in the canyon.
I once tried to go to the Grand Canyon. I was covering spring training in Arizona for Sports Illustrated. Drove at about like 2 p.m. out of Mesa, watched the Cubs, went with a friend to the Grand Canyon, got there. It was... Look at me, got there, and it was dark.
Oh, yeah. No, I thought you were going to say cold. Because
I mean, it was cold. I was wearing shorts and
that's
sandals.
the thing. It's like you go to spring
freezing.
training. It's like 85 degrees. Everything's great. You're like, let's go to Grand Canyon. And you drive up there. When you get up there and you get up to the rim, it is frigid because you realize, oh, Arizona's not hot. Southern Arizona's hot.
It was frigid and also unlit. And I drove back having seen nothing.
There are no floodlights.
There are no. I really did not.
You don't go there at
recognize
night,
that.
dude.
Yeah, that wasn't my
You
plan.
planned it so badly, Pablo. How's that possible, even for you, to have left at a time that your arrival would have been in the dark?
We were racing the sun, and I lost.
They don't teach clocks at Harvard.
Yeah.
Let's not make this about me, guys.
Pablo Torre finds out how time works after the break.
Pablo, does anyone from Harvard ever contact you and say, like, can you stop?
Just like stop what it is that you do.
Yeah, just like I kind of feel like, Harvard, they've got someone at Harvard there who's monitoring all the alums, what they're up to, what diseases they're curing. What
This person just invented this.
Yeah, Supreme Court over here.
Pablo Torre finds out the Harvard Alumni Association hates him after the break.
Pablo.show. Are you a disappointment to everyone who went to Harvard? Are you?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a kid who's running for president who I went to school with, this guy Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh, yeah.
He used to sit in justice. I took a justice class. It's moral reasoning, 22, I think. And it was a big lecture hall in like a Harry Potter sort of auditorium. And I only knew Vivek Ramaswamy, presidential candidate, I believe polling third, right behind Ron DeSantis, because he would raise his hand in lecture in the shape of a V.
Ew.
What?
I don't know.
Look, I've read a lot about this guy, and that by far is the most alarming.
Also,
which says a lot.
He went to our reunion. He went to our 15-year reunion, brought a black SUV that he just kept parked outside with the driver waiting in it, and would like bring the food out of the reunion and eat it in his SUV, and like have like private get-togethers in this car.
This is not someone that we should elect for any office. That's not
for various reasons.
At the beginning, when you said you knew a kid that was running for president, I thought it was an actual kid that went to Harvard with you. It's like,
You have to be
this
35,
kid,
right?
Like a Jonathan Lipnicki character.
Yeah, like, hey, I know this kid. He's running for president. I'm like, oh, damn.
The human head weighs 8 pounds.
This is gonna get aggregated to like the Hill now.
I think I just accidentally broke some
You
political
did, yeah.
gossip.
Oh God.
Well, not accidentally. You had a choice.
How long have you been waiting to bring that up since you saw that he was polling?
Months.
How awful does the inside of that car smell? Poor driver. They're just bringing food in there and crumbs everywhere. You got
I feel like the driver's doing just fine.
No. Guy smells like tuna fish now.
Where's David?
I'm looking at the clock. I'm great. I'm thinking about the fact that it's Yale v. Harvard in the presidential race, and then it's Trump on the Republican side. And it just sort of promulgates every single issue that people have about the Ivy Leagues. And Pablo, you do nothing to make it better.
David, thank you. Let's bring you back for another segment in which we can make fun of your feet again.
Hey, it's Mike Ryan, and I've been outdoors more than I'd like to admit this summer. It's really hot. I've been burning through shirts. Can't go anywhere in South Florida without a backup shirt. I'm just telling you right now. But that's going to be the second best advice I give you here. The best advice I can possibly give you, it's cracking open that beautiful white can and letting the great taste of Miller Lite hit your taste buds so hard you feel it in your heart. Have yourself some Miller time, folks. Miller time. You know, the time when you and your friends can get together and enjoy the simple things in life. Why don't you let these wonderful summer moments get amplified with Miller Lite? Because when it's summertime, it tastes like Miller time. The best beer there is. I promise you, there isn't going to be a better decision that you can make this summer than just taking a sip out of that beautiful white can. Make unforgettable summer memories with Miller Lite. Get Miller Lite delivered right to your door. Visit MillerLite.com/Dan, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
Don Le Batard.
We are crazed right now.
What you are pathetic, Chris.
What do you think?
Stugotz is a liar.
I'm not
He's
saying-
keeping this act over there. Jets has been right the entire time about the Miami Heat, and Amin here is getting buried by Heat Nation. He's been telling you. He's been keeping
You're
it real.
praising Strus. He was 0 for 9.
Strus keep shooting.
What is that? What are we
When
doing?
Strus goes to the cup, he's looking to lay it up. He's not looking to turn it over like Duncan Robinson is. Duncan Robinson is a coward.
Listen.
He is a coward.
All right. Stugotz.
Chris.
A coward.
And Bam can be Bam in D.C. I am done with him. And Kyle Lowry's one of the worst postseason players in the history of the NBA.
This is the Don Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
So the reason we actually brought David Samson on is to explain this massive story in the world of sports media, sports business, and gambling. And while I was contemplating how to phrase a tricky question for me as a part-time ESPN employee, I noticed that there is a cooing in the shipping container because Jess brought her dog in, and it made me think of how much David Samson is terrified of Jess's dog.
It's one of my favorite moments in the history of this show. Seeing David's reaction to Willow.
Willow, that's the name of the dog.
I'd still rather be in studio than on Zoom.
So, David, when you saw the headline here that Dave Portnoy, the founder of Barstool Sports, this cult figure in the world of sports media, has actually gotten 100% of Barstool back they had sold Barstool to Penn Gaming in some financial arrangement to make Barstool Sportsbook a thing.
I think he sold it for $500 million, got it back for nothing.
For $0,
Yeah.
reportedly. And so,
That's
David,
not exactly right.
explain this headline, because that part, let alone the ESPN bet rebranding of Penn Gaming, is one of those things that I don't know what to trust.
So it's two totally different stories, and I'm happy to start with the Barstool part, but make sure that we do the ESPN part correctly. Barstool and Penn, Penn bought Barstool. Dave Portnoy used to run it. Penn bought it. It was a step transaction, and they valued the company at a ridiculous number. They then bought all of the company, paid off Portnoy. However, they were then in charge. But the real money is in gambling, and the real money is in betting. And so Barstool had an app. It was a betting app, and Penn was using that in 16 different states, except it didn't get any market share. It wasn't going anywhere. And Penn Gaming said, we can do better than this. All we have is Surus with Dave Portnoy. We have to worry about everything the guy says. We're worried about our gambling licenses all the time, and we can't stand it anymore. We want to get rid of them. Who's the best brand that we can associate with in sports? ESPN. They knock on ESPN's door and they say, hey, you guys need some cash, don't you? You're under financial pressure. Disney stock price under pressure. We'll give you $150 million a year if we can use your 4 letters. And ESPN said, wait, you'll give us $150 million every year for 10 years, plus the opportunity to buy stock in your company? And all we have to do is change the name of Barstool app, the betting app, to ESPN Bet? You've got yourself a deal. It's a dream for Jimmy Pitaro. The president of ESPN gets to bring cash on the books, and he gets to say to his customers, you watch ESPN, we talk about the games, now you can bet on the games while we're talking about the games. We are a full-service operation, and we will get the DraftKings and FanDuel duopoly. We'll get on the podium, and we'll get rid of all the competition. So that's one side of the deal.
The Barstool side, though, David, right? Mm-hmm. I want to frame this in a very simple way for the audience to understand. Was this a win or a loss for Dave Portnoy?
It's a huge win because he no longer answers to anyone. He was always his own boss. He could hire who he wanted, Ben Mintz. He could say what he wanted with reckless indifference toward licenses, toward regulation, toward a boss of any kind. The ultimate pirate ship guy went corporate and realized he was miserable and found a way out. And all he had to give up was future sales. What does that mean? A kicker. If he ever sells Barstool, because he now owns 100% of it again, if he sells it to anyone, Penn gets 50%. So it's not like Portnoy owns 100% of the entity. He owns 100% of the annual profits or the annual losses. But if he monetizes Barstool, 50% of it still goes to Penn under this deal.
Is it perpetuity?
So it has not been reported how long this lasts, because what Portnoy said is, I will never sell. Well, never say never, number one. Number two, your estate is going to have something to say about that once you croak. So whether or not this continues on after his death, we do not know. This interest that Penn has in Barstool. Next, Barstool can't do its own gambling app. ESPN Bet is with Penn. Barstool on its own cannot compete with them. Ever. We don't know how long.
So they're out of sports gambling for the length of this agreement.
Which isn't insignificant, by the way, because there's a lot of money in that. So they now would need to find a new way to generate all of that revenue that they would get from gambling companies.
Well, yes, but Barstool, their app with Penn, it didn't really do well. They didn't have a big market share at all. It was not driving business the way that Penn thought it should and could. So Penn ends up upgrading with ESPN, and Portnoy gets out of the gambling business when people are trying to get into it because he was so interested in keeping his voice. So he's stepping over dollars to pick up free nickels. And the free is his ability to talk. The nickels are the fact that he was willing to give up future potential money. The fact that he was willing to not do business in the sportsbook world, in the ad revenue world for a period of time. All sorts of covenants is what you're reading. That means promises made by Portnoy that he will not do because he got the company back from Penn. Is it a trade worth doing? For both sides, it's a win-win.
David, do you think the combination of ESPN and Penn will be able to do what you suggested earlier, knock out all the other competition? Because FanDuel and DraftKings has a huge head start.
Right. So I didn't say they'd knock them out. To me, it's getting on the podium, right? Right now, it's DraftKings and FanDuel, and there's no one else close. Fox just went out of business. Barstool had a tiny share. Caesars, BetMGM, they're all nothing compared to what DraftKings and FanDuel have done. What they're betting, what ESPN is betting, pun intended, is that they can be in the same stratosphere as DraftKings and FanDuel. Are they going to replace them? No way. But it is why you're seeing DraftKings with a network, and why FanDuel wanted a network, and why they're trying to be all things to people. Because when you have audience, imagine, Stu, your audience, people watching your show, they can watch it on the network while the app is open. They can bet on Thursday Thunder, as an example, all at the same time. And that's what will happen with ESPN Bet. And that's what DraftKings wants to do, is doing, and will continue to do better as its distribution grows. But you're looking now at 3 different companies who are competing for the betting dollar, and there's a lot of betting dollars out there.
David, what kind of regulation exists with regards to ESPN being a news-breaking outfit and also having its own gambling operation?
So you guys were doing your show, but on Nothing Personal this morning, which is a podcast that I do with Metalark. It is a big topic for me, the conflict of interest with what happened, as an example, with Shams in the draft. What Shams was able to do when he tweeted out that there was going to be a different draft order, and all of a sudden the line moved, and Shams has a deal where he also gets paid by FanDuel. Is there a conflict there? ESPN is going to be very careful because they do not want any sort of regulation. They don't want Washington interrupting any of what they're doing at all. But when you're watching a pregame show and the insiders are giving you information about a game, are you going to act on that information when it comes to placing a bet on ESPN Bet? ESPN is hoping you do, but they're not going to talk about it. They're going to talk about the ethical wall that they're going to build between inside information and the outgoing source of information about betting. They'll call it the ethical wall. Guess what? That's not how it works. People have information, and the smart bettors are going to know who to listen to when and try to take advantage of that.
So the ethical wall you're describing is a tricky one, of course. It's also a version that has existed when it comes to rights deals and the journalists that are employed by the companies that pay for those rights. So this is a tricky dance that has happened throughout the decades. The different spin here seems to be that there is actually, because of the nature of sports betting, a more direct public relationship between news you're breaking and the ability for people to act on that, David. It's a familiar problem. It's a familiar problem, though, is my point at the same time.
Right. I actually would distinguish the problems. What you're talking about is when owners watch MLB Network and get annoyed when MLB Network says something bad about their team and they call up the commissioner and say, I want that person off the air. Or when the owner of a baseball team listens to what the announcer's saying and suspends him like Kevin Brown, or fires him like John Miller, like the Orioles have done, and that I've done as well. It is that there's no money there. That's ego. And that is, we don't want anything negative being spoken. What we're talking about in the gambling world, we're talking dollars and cents versus emotions and feelings.
That's fair. Although I would imagine that in the minds of yourself and your colleagues, when you were making those calls, there was ego with also a concern of protecting a brand, right? Like when you're give me an example, David Samson, of you making a call to complain about something that you felt was entirely ego and not financial.
When we would be criticized for a player move that we did, sending out a player, and the broadcaster would say, well, that doesn't make sense to me. Like Yuri Perez right now with the Marlins when he was sent down.
Bad move.
There was a lot of criticism, but she didn't get it from the announcers. Gabby Sanchez was not going after the Marlins for Yuri Perez being sent down. Why? He'd get in trouble. He's got to back up management. And anytime an announcer would do something, Tommy Hutton used to do it all the time. He was very critical of us, and it bothered Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, very, very much, very much. We'd have to go into the booth during games, and sometimes we'd lie to Jeffrey and say we did it because he wasn't there. And sometimes we'd actually do it if we thought it was egregious. It's sort of like the prayers in the wall. We would look to see what the issue was, and we'd be the ones to decide whether we would answer Jeffrey's prayer or a question. But that's a real thing. But again, Pablo, no money. That was not even a brand issue. That is just, hey, you're not being nice to me, and I want you to be.
David, we have a minute left, and I heard Stugotz FaceTiming someone? What's happening? What was that?
I didn't mean to. I hit the button by mistake. Sorry.
Joe Theismann again?
We've all been there.
Yeah. No, it wasn't Joe T.
David, really quick, I don't know if you already talked about this, but Kevin Brown, what happened to him with the Orioles?
That's backfired, right? I mean, like
has to be that's got to come from the owner's box, right? There's no one working professional who would do that, would they?
It's only from the owner's box. And the Angeloses are famous, Peter, and then he passed that on to his sons. They put the thin in thin-skinned, and this did backfire. And what I'd said on Nothing Personal is that if there's more to the story, the Orioles would have leaked it. If it wasn't just what he said about the Rays and the Orioles, which is the clip we've all seen, if there's more to the story, once the negative press started happening and the avalanche began, they needed to leak what he actually did, even if it's private. No matter what it was, they had to leak it. And no leaks have come out, which means all Kevin Brown did was do exactly what he should do, and that's why the Orioles are and got in so much trouble.
David Samson, the podcast is nothing personal. It is excellent. It is an unusual look at the inside of a boardroom where usually we don't get allowed. So thank you, David.
You're not going to ask him about the Angels? You've been trying to talk about the Angels for 2 days here.
Too goddamn days.
David, 30 seconds or less. How bad are the Angels for not trading Shohei Ohtani?
I don't blame them. Who would want to be the guy to trade a future Hall of Famer and get Bupkis back? You'd have to be an idiot.
Can people stop saying Bupkis? Why is everyone saying Bupkis?
It's a good joke by David. Good joke.
Goodbye, David.
Hey folks, are you missing your NFL team's out-of-market games? Do you not have a great plan? Do you need a much better plan? Well, I've got a deal for you. Switch to my plan from Verizon and get NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV on us with eligible phone purchase and Unlimited Plus. That's a value of up to $449. Get every out-of-market game every Sunday afternoon. Switch to my plan at your Verizon store today for a limited time and get NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV on us with eligible phone purchase and Unlimited Plus. It's your Verizon. $449 value applies to NFL Sunday Ticket 2023-24 only. Additional terms and embargoes apply to NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube. No refunds.
Don Le Batard.
Kiss me where you bruise me. Taste me on that fleshy part.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Taste me on that fleshy part.
Taste me, not touch me.
Taste me on that fleshy part. Wow. Wow, Bruce.
Stugotz.
I'm talking about the clitoris. I'm talking about the clitoris. Yes, I am. Now we're out here riffing. And I'm going to try to find it if I can.
Okay. Well, wonderful rendition.
This is the Don Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
To give you a sense of how the sausage is made, how the sausage fingers are made here, in between segments, I asked Chris Cote about this topic that was on our rundown for the show. The Cesta Cyclones, the Alai team that you own, had a draft, and I said, Chris, it's a topic. What do you got? And you said,
it happened. Look, it was on the topic yesterday, more as like a preview of the draft. Now we're reviewing it. Look, we brought the old band back together. Last year was a terrible season for the Cesta Cyclones.
So why'd you bring them back together?
Because 2 years ago, I mean, geez, let me get to it, guys. 2 years ago, we won a title with our core, and last year, the 4th, 5th, and round pick, we had a lower pick, so we didn't get the guys we wanted. This year, because of last year's bad season, we were able to get the guys we wanted later in the draft. And we had the decision. We were being pressured by a lot of people thinking that we should not go with our Manu, who we've had for 3 seasons. But Douglas, younger, more athletic guy. But we went with Old Faithful. We didn't think the top of our roster was the problem last year. So we're feeling good about the team.
That's not what's happening here.
What's happening?
There's a new billionaire on the block who's entered the league.
Mm-hmm. A couple.
Who's the other one?
So Masvidal is now an owner in their league. UD is now an owner in their league.
Both in attendance last night. Man, we were the cool owners for a couple seasons. Not
Right, you
anymore.
guys are done.
Last night, like in previous years, like early in the draft, some lady would come up to me, "Hey, can we interview you for their little
Wait,
like highlight
I want to
network?"
put this on the poll. Juju, put on the poll, please. Is Chris Cote still a cool highlight owner?
I'm telling you, last
Not the
night
coolest,
I didn't.
though.
I got interviewed, but it was like at the very end.
They were just
and I literally called the lady out. I was just like, "It's fine. Last year you got to me a little sooner. This year Masvidal and UD. I get it. It's fine."
Leaking confidence, man. Like, but I get it, man. It's like in English Premier League soccer, it was like these community-owned clubs, and everyone's like feels a part of it. And then these Russian billionaires come in and are like, "I've got this." And next thing you know, teams that were trash overnight were just powerhouses, changing the landscape of European football forever. And that's what's happening in Alai.
I will start a little beef here though, because last night I heard a lot from UD talk, because like he was at the table right next to us. So
Chris, be careful.
Almost any time he would draft somebody, championship expectations would be his like greeting.
Yeah.
And UD, as someone who's been in the league a couple years, that roster's not winning no championship.
Whoa!
Your roster.
Frankie is not going to defend us from
Yeah.
UD.
I'm just saying,
I don't think we have
I
enough
get it.
security.
You come in with the first year, you're excited. You want to bring that heat culture. I get it. I'm not disrespecting it. I'm sure he is going to change the culture with the Rebote Renegades, but not with the roster he put together.
Isn't Monica Puig, the Olympian, also a team owner
Yes,
now?
Monica.
Is
Puig.
Masvidal going to like insurrect whoever wins the championship?
I don't know.
Yo,
Pablo.
but like that's.
So are you
hold
like
on.
the
He's got to go see him, Pablo. Like, what are you doing?
Why did
Sorry,
you?
Udonis Haslem.
Why
can be
did you
taunted,
put
but
Chris Cote
Jorge
in that spot? I
Masvidal
know,
can't
but
be
you
made
just.
fun of for overthrowing the government.
What'd you want Chris to do with that?
I've got UD and Masvidal
He handled it
like
well.
in a wrestling ring, throwing Chris against the ropes. And
They play highlight with Chris Cote. They put him in the what's it called? Cesta?
The cesta. I thought you meant the court.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
what like the
It's a cesta.
yeah. They put him in. And they fling him against the wall, and then they catch him, and then they fling him against the wall.
So how many new players are on your team? Because it sounds like you drafted largely the same team that finished in last place.
We have 6 players on our team. Our top 3 guys, same guys from last year.
Same core.
Bottom 3, totally different. We brought back Jedin and Ikeda, who were on our team when we won the championship. So we have 5 of the 6 guys from our championship
Back to
team.
your roots.
Back to our roots.
Yes.
And we improved that 6th spot. We had Joseph before. Now we have Bueno. Ripe for great nicknames.
Que bueno.
No, I mean, there was not no Bueno last night. It was Si Bueno.
What?
We're working on it. We're workshopping on the phrases.
I am fascinated with
Yes,
the idea
good.
that UD would greet everyone with championship expectations, and now it makes me think: is that what they say at the Heat? Like when you get traded to the Heat, or you say, like when Damian Lillard gets sent here, is he going to walk in and are they all going to shake his hand and say championship
This is a culture.
expectations? This
is like UD, the Rebote Renegade. Sorry, I mean that culture needs some remodeling.
That's what he's doing.
Okay, and I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying that, dude.
Not only finished in last place, I went to a highlight game last
Johnny
year.
know nothing over here.
Yeah,
I mean,
I went
Jesus.
to a highlight game last year, and the Cesta Cyclones were playing, and it was late in the season, and there were 0 people from the show there.
Well, I mean,
the
that's-
team that is proud, you abandoned your team. You
Yeah.
stopped going at the end of
Did
the
you
year.
see our record at that time? You know that's how it's gonna go.
You're the owner.
If you don't perform, you think you think Mark Cuban's showing up when they're 10-58?
Yes.
Every
I bet he's
game.
not.
So you're lashing out at their poor performance by not showing up and supporting them.
Zagaki,
The team you chose.
play better.
I love you.
Play better.
Billy, my favorite part about him telling UD to get his shit in order and all that stuff is he is basically the Washington Commanders. And UD over here is Eric Bieniemy. And like, they're like, oh, look at this guy talking all this stuff. Like, what has he ever done?
The rough roster, man. That's all I'm saying. It's hard out here with a rough roster.
So as Chris Cote navigates the changing landscape of Alai, I want to turn to what, in fact, is happening in the changing landscape of college football. Lucy, I've been monitoring you all show, and I can just see you grinding your teeth all day about the ACC.
I love college football so much because it's stupid, but it has reached a point where it's too stupid. It is too dumb. These conferences are so dumb. Right now, we're like waiting to see if the ACC officially goes after Stanford and Cal.
Nothing says ACC like Cal.
And
Stanford and UNC.
SMU also somehow has hitched their wagon to this too.
SMU and Virginia. I mean,
SMU was like, you don't have to pay us for 5 years if you'll like take us. And the ACC is like, great. Nothing says Atlantic Coast like Palo Alto, Berkeley, and Dallas. It's too dumb. At first, it was funny. Like when USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten, that was quirky. That was weird. Now it's stupid. It's too dumb.
These conferences need name changes.
Yes.
When are we gonna? This is my big question.
One big.
What I
conference?
want to find out is when are these names gonna change?
The big one.
I'm like one big conference. I'm waiting for that. Like they're all just gonna join the
big
same
one.
conference.
I like that.
The Big One title game? Jeez.
Instead of the I, they have just one, so it's B1G.
Well, they already did that for
Yeah.
the Big Ten.
Yeah, but they can steal it.
I like that we're now coming around to Chip Kelly praising Notre Dame for being independent and saying that
here
all
we
college
go.
football teams should just be separate than their Olympic sports, and the Olympic sports can be in the conference that is generally regionally based, but then football should break away. Muffet McGraw is calling for it as well. I feel like we're going to see all of the big time leaders in the Olympic sports, quote unquote, and the quote unquote non-revenue generating sports now be like, all right, we need a say in this because this is ridiculous.
No, absolutely. Like I talked to Jim Boeheim about this. I talked to Bob Huggins about this. Like they're
Huggy Bear.
They're pissed. I went
Doesn't
to
really have a say anymore.
I went to West Virginia like I want to say the year after they went to the Final Four, and it was the day they found out that they were leaving the Big East for
the Big 12.
Big 12, and that staff, I've never seen a staff more pissed about, because they were like, Big East, we go to New York for the tournament, like you spend like a week in New York, you play at the Garden, all this stuff. Now we have to go to Kansas City. They were irate, but like everyone's saying, like football's doing this to us. Football is ruining everything, ruining these conferences, ruining these rivalries. And so I agree with Chip Kelly. Like separate this stuff. Make your regular sports play in a regular conference so that we can have the ACC basketball back, Big East basketball, the Pac-10 and all. Like, let's bring it back to the
Football
heyday.
should be the only one that goes through these
Yeah,
changes,
like if
right.
you go play in the conference.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I do like that Notre Dame, as all of the great unbundling and rebundling of college sports is happening, is basically just running a Patreon.
Yeah.
Like, you want our football games? Pay us directly. Subscribe.
Well, Peacock,
Go to
right?
Peacock.
www.pablo.show.
NBC. There is one game on Peacock a year now, which I have in the past said I'm glad that my grandparents are deceased for not having to explain the login situation to them. So yes, but I mean, I think it's incredibly silly, especially for this ACC edition, right, Lucy? Because they're not going to be making that much more money, and any money that they'll get from like reopening the ESPN deal and adding these teams sounds like it's going to just be offset by the travel costs, because obviously traveling from the Bay Area to Miami or the Bay Area to Virginia or Dallas to wherever, Pittsburgh, that's actually not that long of a flight, but it's ridiculous. Like, it's not going to end up making anyone that much more money. And in the meantime, there's rumors that, I mean, Florida State people have explicitly been like, we want to get out of the ACC, but they're so locked into this TV contract that it's going to cost them tons of money to leave and potentially be not worth leaving because of how long the contract is for. So no one has actually decided they're going to do it yet. So it just makes very little sense and seems like something that the ACC is doing as a way to like try to stay relevant.
Yeah.
Like the Big 12 did. But then the Big 12 signed the TV deal that kind of made them feel solid, and the ACC can't really do that.
I'm curious to see if the Stanford, Cal joining this conference reopens that TV deal in a way that Florida State, Clemson, Miami, UNC now have an avenue to leave. That's the risk you take with that. And also a thing with travel costs is these small sports are not getting the revenue. Like, it's going to be harder for them to fly all of their players out across the country. There are effects just across the board, and they're all bad.
It's very silly. And I do wonder if the argument to break away college football from the universities and the conference structure it's a non-starter because of the lingering question of whether or not these athletes will be classified as employees. Because how can you make that argument that they aren't if you then create their own little separate ecosystem for them to play and for the universities to make the most amount of money off of them versus the quote-unquote non-revenue generating sports? Sorry about that.
Pardon me.
Ew,
I just like how the person who is most responsible for
Tummy
the
ache city
chaos
back here.
of the ACC, the tummy ache, in this conference happens to be the guy that we all work for.
Yeah, he screwed them, but
John Skipper screwed the ACC.
we can always
I do
blame it on
apologize for
Texas.
doing that to your program.
He does a great.
It really is the best.
Mr. Le Batard.
Dan Le Batard.